You're listening to Win-Win, an entrepreneurial community with your host, Ben Wolf.
And welcome to Win-Win, an entrepreneurial community. This is Ben Wolf, as always, your host. Today, we are going to learn from our guest how to rock your complicated and long sales cycle clients. That is the main topic for today. I remind everybody, please pause for a moment here and you're listening or watching of this podcast. Subscribe, like, leave a review, follow, whatever it is in your particular platform that you are listening to or watching this in, whether it's Spotify, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or whatnot. So go ahead and do that. Leave a review. Leave like a nice one sentence, even just Apple reviews. I definitely need more of those. 5-star if possible. If it's less than 5 stars, please you can just not leave a review. And moving on, I want to get on to introducing our guest today. She is founder and chief sales officer at AliceHeiman.com. I usually don't do this in the middle, but is it Heiman or Heiman? How do you pronounce it?
Heiman.
Heiman. Okay, thank you, because I already started saying it wrong. So she is founder and chief sales officer at AliceHeiman.com. And that's, I'll get to spelling in a minute. She and her team teach companies with business to business, large clients, or with long and complex sales cycles, how to rock their sales and large account management processes. She was previously a director and a trainer at the Miller Heiman Group. And a sought-after public speaker. She's a Vistage speaker. She's a very well-known person and speaker out there. You can find out more about her at AliceHeiman.com. And Heiman is not spelled the way you might think. It's Heiman, Alice Heiman, Heiman.com. And welcome, Alice Heiman.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here, and I get to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is how do smaller companies sell to really large companies when there is a long sales cycle and a lot of complexities to navigate.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that too. Some guests that I have on this show, will come in and get much more similar guests at different things. We've had salespeople before, people who focus on sales, but this is a really, really unique angle that I think will add a lot of value to the listeners here. So I'm glad for what you'll be able to teach them today. And with that, if you could start off just giving people like a quick 2-minute history on like where you came from, how you got to be doing what you're doing and talking about now, so people have a little more context.
Absolutely. So I want to say to all of you out there that I did not start out thinking I was going to have a career in sales. That just wasn't something I was going to do. I went to college. I got a degree in elementary and special education. Taught for a few years, got a master's degree and became a reading specialist. And I was doing that. And my entrepreneurial spirit, which, I was born with, just kept striking out on me. And I kept starting up clubs and starting up organizations and starting up businesses. And so that was, kind of, an interesting thing. But all of a sudden, after a couple of years, my dad wanted me to come work with him at Miller Heiman. And that was all about selling and how to navigate the complex sale. So I got catapulted literally from kindergarten to the corporate world. And wow. I learned all about the complex sale. Now, I had done a little bit of selling because when I was teaching, I always needed extra money. So I worked part-time. And then I did have my own business that was a bookstore and a resource center for parents and teachers, which I, wow. built that myself and wrote a business plan and all of that. So I had a little teeny tiny bit of business background, but nothing with corporate at all. So it was really different. But everything I had learned as a teacher about changing human behavior, navigating interesting situations, putting puzzles together to come up with a solution helped me tremendously in the corporate world. And so when I did go to work for Miller Heiman, I was able to help in many different ways and work with some of the largest companies there, like Fidelity Investments, Hewlett Packard, AT&T, Dow Chemical, Merck, you name it, the Fortune 500. And they all had a very complex sale. But so interesting though, Ben, is how I got from this big corporate world into the world of startups and smaller companies that are closely held. So they're not public companies, not on, these big Fortune 500 lists or anything like that. So that was very interesting to switch. And I won't get into how that happened, but all of a sudden I found myself in the .com world helping CEOs and sales leaders that all came from this big corporate world start up their sales teams from scratch. And still today, these closely held companies that I work with have a complex sale. They sell expensive, complicated, technical things to really large companies. And that's what I help them navigate.
Right. And that is a really interesting niche, I think. And so let's paint a picture, if you don't mind, of these small and mid-sized businesses that are selling to large businesses or who have these longer, more complicated sales cycles. Paint a picture of them. Like, what kinds of deals are they dealing with? What kind of businesses are they in? Just like paint a picture, like before you would even come into the picture, paint a picture of them.
Yes. So I'll give you kind of general, and then I'll dive into a couple of examples of my clients. So in general, they are either a well-funded startup or, a more mature company, maybe 10 years oldish, just past that startup place. Sometimes they're older, like 30 years, but they all are still owner-led and investor-backed. Some of them are family owned, so the investors are family members, but they have private equity funding, or in the case of a startup, of course, venture funding. And the CEOs all have the same goal in common. They want to grow their sales and get a high valuation for their company so that when they choose to exit, they can reap the rewards of all their hard work. Or if they choose to pass it down to the next generation, that generation will receive a business that has a high valuation and they can work it, right? So they have this same goal to really build this world-class organization that can perform and get a high valuation. Now, these companies are companies that are in tech. Like they manufacture something technical, something to do with computers, medical devices, important machinery that goes into making, precise items, right? So they manufacture these things. And in many cases, the owner is the founder and they invented these things or thought them up or something, right? And then they are manufacturing these things or just developing these software. So a lot of software companies also, and then they're out after what we call enterprise accounts. So they want to sell their software to companies that are 100 times their size. So if they're 10 million, 50 million, maybe even 100 million, they're selling to companies that are billions of dollars large, right? And they have to be very clear on who their target audience is and direct their activity specifically to that audience. So I'll give you an example. One of the clients I've worked with for about 6 years sells software as a service. They have a platform that helps salespeople have everything they need in terms of collateral on their laptop or their tablet or their phone. So it's available at all times, whether they're online or offline. And they can present it using this tool in a really beautiful and easy interface for the customer. And so they sell this to companies who have large distribution networks. So this is really a sales engagement tool. It helps salespeople do their job better. It helps engage the customer. Well, some of their clients are humongous companies like Caterpillar, Toro, Navistar, Medtronics, just really, really large companies. And this company is small. They have about 30 employees and their revenues are still, are just barely in the double digits of millions. So what happens is they have this target audience that they want to sell to, and they have to have a fantastic strategy, because these big companies are, so much more complicated and so much mightier than they are. So they have to appear extremely organized. They have to have exceptional customer experience. They have to have salespeople who know how to navigate, because in these complex sales, one of the things that makes them so complex and stretches out the sales cycle is that there's not just one or two decision makers. There's 8, 10, or 12 decision makers. So I help this company to strategize and plan who they're going to sell to, and then how exactly they're going to generate those leads, and then approach those big customers and have their salespeople with their team navigate so that they find all of the people involved in making the decision, and they learn about those people and understand how to bring that whole buying team to consensus and keep the deal moving forward. The other thing that's making this complex is we're talking about hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars in a short period of time or over the lifetime of that customer. And so no one wants to make a mistake, right? The buying team has a lot of risk when they're spending that kind of money. So that adds complexity. And so we since the smaller company might be newer or not as well known, they have to minimize the risk for this very large company to buy from them. So these are some of the kinds of things
Right.
that I help these owners with, is really just this strategy around building an organization that can navigate these complex sales.
Well, would you mind, and I apologize for, I'm having some video issues, so I apologize for my video not showing now, but would you mind going into a couple of those, I don't know, techniques or steps that
Sure.
you teach them to use or help them develop, that they should be having in mind if, if somebody out there is thinking, whatever, that they also are selling to bigger companies or in more complex cycles. What are some of the elements of that?
So if you are right now maybe thinking about doing what we call going upstream, right? So maybe you're selling to smaller companies, what we call SMB, small and mid-sized businesses, and you'd now like to sell to enterprise, the very first thing that you'll want to do is take a look at the total addressable market, right? So how many companies are there out there the size that you want that could buy from you? And so maybe you say, well, okay, we want, to have a target market that is companies over 100 million in sales. I would say even bigger than that, probably would be like close to $1 billion in sales. And then we'd like them to be in these verticals: healthcare, travel, or hospitality, and manufacturing. So now we know that they have to be at least $1 billion in revenues, and we know the 3 industries that they're in. And then we might also start to segment by geography. We might want to start at least in the western half of the United States, or depends on the maturity of the company. You could cover the whole United States, but typically we're going to have some geography. We're not just going to go after everyone in the world, at least not to start, right? So that's really important first, is you've got to really target your audience. What's your total addressable market? And then what part of that market do you want? And then specifically call out the demographics that will tell you you are going after the right companies. Now, that will give you a list of some size. It might give you a list of 1,000 or 2,000. Maybe it'll give you a list of more, but whatever that list is, we still want another way to cull it down a little bit more. So we might want companies who also care about the environment, for example, and that might take out 1,000 companies and whittle us down to 2,000. So whatever the demographic indicators are that tell you this company is most likely to buy from you, we want to write those out and make sure everybody's 100% clear on who we're going after. Now, here's a caveat. That's who we're going to spend time, money, energy, and resources going to get. However, some of the companies that aren't on our list might call us because they heard about us from someone they know, or because they were researching and we came up. So they'll come to us. We won't turn them away because they don't fit our ideal customer. We'll talk to them. We just won't spend time, money, and resources going after them.
Okay.
So once we've determined that, now each salesperson is going to take a subset of these accounts, these that we want to go after, and we're going to plan an approach. Now, if you have a marketing team, marvelous. But a lot of the smaller companies that I work with, especially when they're kind of in that 10 to 50 million, they maybe have 1 or 2 marketing people and have a little bit of outsourcing. So we're really leaving it to sales to generate the leads. Now, the first thought is, let's go cold calling. Well, cold calling does work, but it's really hard. And my job is to make sales easier. So I don't want anybody doing it the hard way, Ben. Why? Let's do it the easy way. So I could give you a couple specific examples of how a salesperson could start out and approach
that's a great
list like this.
A great next step. Yeah.
Okay. So if I had a list, maybe let's say I was given 200 named accounts that I should go and try to land. What I would do is carve out about 25 to start with. I would take those 25 and I would do a little bit of research on each, and then I would cull it down to my top 5 that I want to go after. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm going to do this in sets of 5 for a reason. There's always a method to my madness. So what I want to do is make it manageable. And I also want to be able to put a concentrated effort. If I try to go after all 200 at a time, it's just too much, 200 at a time. Now, if I have a marketing team, they could certainly get some email addresses and start marketing to those 200 while I'm segmenting it down and putting out a concerted effort. But I personally, as a salesperson, should not try to go after 200 companies at one time. Now, some of the specific reasons. 1, if I pick 5 companies, I can deeply research each of those 5 and learn the things that I need to learn to be able to bring insights into the conversations that I plan on having. If I'm trying to do 200 at a time, there's no way that I could do the amount of research that's required for this type of sale for me to really make an impact and make an impression. Now, if I'm a salesperson and I need CMOs and CEOs and VPs to talk to me, I got to appear pretty darn smart. I got to appear worthy of having a conversation. Right. So if that's the case, then I better do my homework, and I can't do 200 at a time. I can do 25, narrow it down to 5, and do a deep dive into those 5. So that's the first reason. The second reason is because I need to find 5 to 10 people at each one of those companies that I believe could be involved in making the decision. Now, that's, like I said, one of the things that makes up a complex sale is that there's many people involved in making that decision. So if you follow the Gartner research, we went from a couple of years ago, it was 6 to 8. Now it's 8 to 10. Now it's like up to 12. More and more people are getting involved, and different people are getting involved. So we have to, as a salesperson, be aware of that. So if I've got 5 companies and at least 5 people at each company, maybe more, that I'm trying to learn about and approach, now that's 25.
That's already a lot.
Right? And I've got to email and call and link in and stay in touch and stay in touch and stay in touch, because speaking of 12, that's about how many touches it's taking before somebody goes, oh, that looks interesting. I think I'll respond. Unfortunately, your salespeople are stopping after 3 attempts. I emailed them, I called them, I didn't get a response, I'm done. So CEOs out there, sales leaders out there, I'm telling you, we must be persistent. But 12 touches, you're thinking, oh my gosh, 12 touches. Well, it's not like, hey, did you see my
It's not
last
like
email?
harassment.
Right. Wait, it can't be harassment. Ben, it can't, right? So we better add value. So if we've done a deep dive into those 5, we've done our homework, we have those insights. Now those 12 touches, each one of them, we're sharing insights and we're making people think, wow, maybe I should talk to that Alice Heiman. She seems to know a lot about our industry and something about our business. So with
Can you say one thing? Can you say one thing about the kind of value adds that you're talking about?
Sure. Well, I'll give you a perfect example. I was just working on this with a client. So we're going to do a campaign. We've got, I call it the 5 by 5 by 5 by 5 by 5 because I don't want them to get overloaded. So I say, just think in 5s and you'll be okay. Otherwise it gets too big, right? So we've got these 5 companies. We're going to find 5 people at each company, right? We're going to spend 5 weeks giving them 12 to 15 touches. So what it would look like is this. So we were going after auto dealers with my one client. And so of course we have a giant list of auto dealers, but we only want auto dealers that have 3 or more, what we call roofs. So that locations, right? 3 or more locations. So 10 is even better, right? So this is who our specific target audience is. Now we're going to build, we picked the first 5. And now at auto dealers, there's not going to be 12, but there's going to be 3 or 4 people who are going to get involved in the decision, especially for these bigger ones. You know, there's going to be the GM of each location. There's going to be the owner. There's going to be some IT people, sales leaders. So, you know, you're going to get about 5, right? So we said, okay, let's do an approach for these auto dealers. We'll get all the names and we get started. So we say, all right, the first touch in our campaign is going to be a phone call. Now, it could be an email, it could be a LinkedIn, it's up to you. It could be any of those things, but we decided on a phone call. So we decided that we would call and we had a very specific message for them about the product that was short. And just basically asking them, does this have enough interest to you to schedule some time to talk about it? That's all. Because when I'm cold calling you, I'm interrupting you.
Right.
And so I need to be brief.
You're not expecting them to talk right then.
No, I'm not. Now, sometimes they say they can, so be prepared. But usually they'll set an appointment. If you say something specific enough with those insights you got, in talking with other auto dealers like you, we found that our product can help them do X 5 times faster than if without it. Does this have enough interest to you to schedule an appointment to talk with me about it? Something simple like that. So it's got to be compelling, right? And then they say yes or no. All right. Or you leave a voicemail. So then I write out the voicemail, and the voicemail again is very specific. Hi, it's Alice from ABC Company. We haven't met yet. I'm calling today because in my work with other auto dealers like you, I've found, and then whatever insights, if this is of interest to you, I'd love to schedule an appointment. I'm going to send you an email to follow up. So that might be my first touch, right? So then I go ahead and I send an email with an interesting insight, some statistics, very short, maybe a link, maybe a video, and send it off. Now, speaking of video emails, you know, are really great right now. They're getting a great response. So if you're not using videos in your emails, consider it. All right, so then I send that email.
You say video, you mean a specific video for that recipient?
Correct. So like using a tool like Vidyard, BombBomb, Hippo Video, Dub, there's a million of them, but I can record, it will compress, and I can put it into the email. It puts a little thumbnail right in there so you can see me. As soon as you open the email, you see my smiling face, and when you click it, it plays the video. So those are getting a high rate of response. So then the next step is, okay, so I've called, I've emailed. Now I'm going to go see if I can find them on LinkedIn. And if they're active on LinkedIn, if they're not active, I'm done. If they're active on LinkedIn, I'm going to interact with their posts, learn more about them. And then maybe the next day or two, I'm going to send a connection request again with some type of insight. I'm not going to say, oh, I emailed you and I called you and you didn't respond, so I'm going to try you on LinkedIn. Do not say that. And do not say, oh, I was stopping by your profile. Don't say that either.
All right, it's fake.
Say something smart like, I'm working with auto dealers like you, and we found these amazing things, and I'd love to have a conversation with you about it. Let's connect. Okay. And then once they've connected, then you can start a conversation. Don't try to sell them anything. In fact, don't try to sell them anything, period. Help them. Help them with the problem that you know they have that you can solve. And then they'll buy. Right? Versus, let me tell you all about my product or service, or let me send you, and if you're on LinkedIn, you get these messages all the time. I'm Alice, and I do this, and I do that, and my company does this, and my company does that, and here you can watch a video all about my company. Bam, delete. Don't do that. So you would get these campaigns set up for 12 touches. So like day 1, phone call. I say call twice, call once in the morning, call once in the afternoon, but only one of the times leave a voicemail. Here's my best advice on this. Call in the morning and leave a voicemail. That gives them the whole day to get back to you before at the end of the day, you call and try them again. They don't pick up, you don't leave a voicemail. Now you skip a day or two, right? But in that day or two between you calling them again, maybe it's 3 days before you call them again, you're going to try LinkedIn. You're going to try email.
Right.
You might try Facebook. It depends on who your audience is. Wherever they live, go there. You're on Instagram, go there. Wherever they live, go there, right? So you do this for 12 touches. At the end of 12 or 15 touches, if they haven't responded, they're not going to, at least not now. So you can put them in the recycle bin and take them out in 6 months and try again. But if you do that type of a concerted campaign, it's a concerted effort on those 5 people at those 5 companies, and you run that strategically and you'll keep after it and be consistent, you will have a lot of leads. You will get somebody from one of those companies, to talk to you. And what every salesperson wants is more conversations, right? So that's specifically how you approach it. And if it's a larger company with more buying influences, you have to find 8 or 12 people that you're going to, deploy your campaign against.
Right. No, that's look, this show is all about giving like actionable information for people. And even if you don't have large accounts, I think that anybody in sales can use a lot of those nuggets that you said. I mean, the don't give up after 3, the be persistent, but be helpful, focusing on small chunks of people. There's a lot of nuggets in there that are extremely useful, and we're just about out of time, but I just wanted to cover one other thing, because honestly, I think people should review, make a transcript of what you just spoke about. But on the account management side, briefly, what's scary, or how do people mess up with large account management in these kind of instances? And, I guess what's the main thing that they should be thinking about doing differently?
So are you talking about before they land them, or once they land the large account?
Well, what I meant was after they land them. But maybe, but if I'm asking the wrong question, I mean, feel free to talk about something that you think would be most useful to people.
You're talking about after they land them.
Yeah. Saying you got the deal. Now account management, so I think of account management, I think of the part after the deal, after the handoff.
Just did a training for about 500 people this morning on exactly that. So retention is critical, right? All the statistics, just look it up, but it costs so much less to retain a customer and grow them than it does to land a new one. You need both, but you really need to retain your customers. So the big mistakes I see with large accounts is simply that we ignore them. And I was
just talking with a group today about the same thing.
Yeah. It's like, when was the last time you talked to your customer? Well, maybe
sometimes people are afraid. They're afraid they're going to get a complaint.
Right. They're not proactive. And maybe they talk to the person. So example, my software company, they talk to the people who load their software all the time, the worker bees, but they don't talk to the people who get results from their software. No good, right? So they've, we've changed that. They've started to make sure they're talking to people at every level in the organization, the people who care about the bottom line, the people who care about the people who care about the product and how it works. You've got to talk at all levels. So really the big mistake is just simply ignoring them. So once you've landed, right, your job is to deliver impeccably, right? Deliver what you promised. Onboard them, give them the training they need, hand holding, check in, check and see if they're satisfied. Just stay with them, stay with them, stay with them. Now, some of your companies have a team that will help you do that, an onboarding team, a customer success team, customer support, but usually customer support is reactive, not proactive. Customer success is proactive, reaching out. So stay with them for the first period of time that makes sense to make sure they are supremely happy. And then have a cadence for checking in with every level in that organization to confirm their satisfaction and to learn about what else they need, how else you can help them so that you can cross-sell and upsell. And as they buy more from you and you provide this exceptional experience for them, they become very loyal. And they'll just look to you for answers, which is wonderful. And they'll also refer you to other people and make introductions for you. So you simply just can't land them and leave them, right? You all talk about land and expand. Well, you can't expand somebody you don't talk to, right? And there is so much money being left on the table at corporations, large and small, all over the world, because we don't have a good plan for managing these large accounts once we land them.
Right. No, that's great. It's great advice, and the multi-levels I think is a great nugget on that too. Obviously, the continued contact. One thing I've seen is that it prevents people potentially leaving, even if they're not happy, because when you talk with them and you find out what's bothering them and you can address it, then it preemptively addresses the point where if you're ignoring them, and then 2 months later, after the last time, 5-6 months after the last time they heard from you, they hear from a competitor who does your 12-step LinkedIn reach out, and then they talk to them and they'd be like, oh yeah, I don't know, I'm annoyed for 3 months about this company that I never bothered to tell them about it. So didn't talk to their customer specialists or whatever, and so it never got addressed, and they're just annoyed and primed to go somewhere else. So this prevents that as well. Anyway.
It happens every single day. People leave you and you have no idea why, because you either didn't do a good job and you didn't ask, and so they didn't tell you, or somebody else just stays in front of them.
Right. Yeah, no, the persistence, and then the account management, the multi-level, it's great stuff. And look, I really, really appreciate it. I think there was a huge number of stuff that people can get out of this. Look, Heiman.com, Heiman, Heiman.com. Let me check you out. Look, if you're one of these companies, if you have large clients, complex clients, need help when developing the sales cycle with your sales team, or involving your marketing department, obviously reach out to Alice, certainly, and talk about it, see if there's a synergy there. But I really, really appreciate what you shared today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, and you can message me there and ask me a question. Happy to provide resources. So thanks so much, Ben. It's really been a pleasure.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you so much. And thanks everybody for joining, and we'll see you guys on the other side. Bye.
You're listening to Win-Win, an entrepreneurial community with your host, Ben Wolf.